Okay, so I decided that instead of just making videos for my podcast and for fun, what I want to do, I did a YouTube search, and there's just not much out there with like Charlotte Mason immersion examples. So we have a music website, Miss Mason's Music, that teaches about how to do Charlotte Mason music lessons. But Lillian and I are here homeschooling, and so we're gonna do an immersion lesson from a nature book we're doing, and hopefully this helps out families who are trying to learn how to do Charlotte Mason. So here we are, no makeup, just our normal selves on a normal Thursday morning. This is the book we've been using. It's a beautiful old book, Faber's Book of Insects, a living book about insects. And so for our special study, we've been reading this, and then we usually pull up a YouTube video at the end, which we don't need to show you how to do. We will actually demonstrate how we read and narrate this. So if you're struggling, and there are videos out there on narration, and there are great steps to narration and that sort of thing. But on a typical day, I just want to give you guys freedom to not overthink it, and to actually just engage with the book that you're reading and trust that your children are learning what the Lord wants them to learn. So are we still in the same? We've been reading. So one thing you do want to do or try to do is to recap from your previous lesson. It's helpful because it brings to mind what you read the last time. So we're reading about this type of caterpillar moth called the Psyches. So I'll let Lillian just recap what we've learned so far about it, or what you can remember, and then we'll jump into reading a small section. We won't do a huge section because then the video will be really long. But anyway, what do you remember that we've learned so far about this interesting insect?
So with this insect, the females never turn into moths, but the males do. And when they lay their eggs, they lay their eggs inside their chrysalis, but then they die after they lay their eggs. And then once the babies hatch, then they eat the mother's flesh as their food for the first couple hours and days. And then the moth, the male moth, he also likes to eat the chrysalis, right?
Oh, I don't remember that part.
He likes to eat something that has to do with the caterpillar.
Okay. And do you want to explain what this so the female stays a caterpillar her whole life, begins to change, and then dies after laying her eggs, but what does she cover herself with? And then the babies steal from her after she dies.
She covers herself with these tiny little twigs that are really light, so kind of like dried grass or dead twigs, so that it's not too heavy.
Hollow stems and things.
Yeah, and then she puts it around her body so she's camouflaged. And then the babies steal it and put it on themselves, but they're such a small animal that the babies are really hard to see.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't they only 2 millimeters long or something?
Probably at first,
what
yeah.
It said.
And we watched a video last week about I think they get on cypress evergreens, and they'll cover the whole thing here in the Midwest and can just kill a tree. So you have to collect them, but because the females hang themselves up and then the eggs hatch out from their bodies. So you want to collect all of them hanging up in the tree. It's kind of interesting. So we'll do a short reading and narration to model that now that she's kind of remembered what we read from last time. And then after that, we'll pause and splice our video and add some about how we might do a nature journal entry on some of these things we've read sometimes. We don't always do that, but we do sometimes. Okay, go ahead.
I will now describe in greater detail the dressing of the grubs. The hatching of the eggs take place in the first fortnight of July. The head and upper part of the little grubs are of a glossy black, and the next two segments are brownish, and the rest of the body is a pale amber. They are sharp, lively little creatures who run about with short, quick steps. For a time after they are out of the bag where they are hatched, they remain in the heap of the fluff that was stripped from their mother. Here, there is more room and more comfort too than in the bag whence they came. And while some take rest, others bustle about and exercise themselves in walking. They are all picking up strength before leaving the outer case. They do not stay long amid this luxury. Gradually, as they gain vigor, they come out and spread over the surface of the case. Work begins at once, a very urgent work, that of dressing themselves. By and by, they will think of food. At present, nothing is of any importance but clothes.
It's a French name, Montaigne, maybe?
Montaigne, when putting on a cloak, which his father had worn before him, used to say, "I dress myself in my father," while the young Psyches in the same way dressed themselves in their mothers. In the same way, it must be remembered, not in her skin, but in her clothes. From the outer case of sticks, which I have sometimes described as a house, and sometimes as a garment, they scrape the material to make themselves a frock. The stuff they use in the pith of the little stalks, especially of the pieces that are split lengthwise, because the contents are more easily taken from these.
Let's pause there. I actually think this is what I read you yesterday, because we just talked about how they got dressed in their mother's clothes.
Yesterday?
Or last week.
No.
Uh-huh.
No.
Because we were just talking about how the babies...
No, because we finished here.
Yeah, but I read to you.
You did not read this.
I did, because we talked about what a pith was.
No, we didn't read this.
This happens. We reread accidentally.
We never finished this.
Well, I read part of this because that's how we looked up the babies. So pause and narrate. You must... Whoops. So just narrate what you heard. I don't know if we finished
this.
No, but we read that part.
Anyway. No, we did not.
Okay,
you talked about a pit in the last.
Let's pause and narrate what we just read. We just told, as our recap, how the babies dress themselves with the mother's sticks. So what else did you hear in that section that you can add?
It's right here. This is what talks about it. See?
Okay.
Talks about it twice.
Okay. Well,
you're wrong.
Why don't you narrate what we just read? This is what it is like to homeschool teenagers. We're never quite in agreement. Okay.
So, the babies hatch in the middle of the night in July, and they are taking their mother's clothing because they want to keep a part of it, and like remembering her, but not in like her skin, but her clothes. It's weird. And then they have to finally get out of the chrysalis and start moving and stuff. So they get out and then they cover themselves in the little stalks and stuff.
Okay. Do you want to read the next part, or do you want me to? Okay. We also take turns reading. The manner of beginning the garment is worth noting. The tiny creature employs a method as ingenious as any that we could hope to discover. The wadding is collected in pellets of infinitesimal infinitesimal size. How are these little pellets to be fixed and joined together? The manufacturer needs a support, a base, and this support cannot be obtained on the caterpillar's own body. The difficulty is overcome very cleverly. The pellets are gathered together and by degree fastened to one another with threads of silk. For the caterpillar, as you know, can spin silk from his own body as the spider spins her web. In this way, a sort of garland is formed with the pellets or particles swinging in a row from the same rope. When it is long enough, this garland is passed round the waist of the little creature in such a way as to leave its 6 legs free. Then it ties the ends together with a bit of silk so that it forms a girdle round the grub's body. This girdle is the starting point and support of the whole work. To lengthen it and enlarge it into a complete garment, the grub has only to fix to it the scraps of pith which the mandibles never cease tearing from the case. These scraps or pellets are sometimes placed at the top, sometimes at the bottom or side, but they are always fixed at the foredge. No device could be better contrived than this garland, first laid out flat and then buckled like a belt round the body. Once this start is made, the weaving goes on well. Gradually, the girdle grows itself into a scarf, a waistcoat, a short jacket, and lastly, a sack. And in a few hours, it is complete, a conical hood or cloak of magnificent whiteness. Thanks to his mother's care, the little grub is spared the perils of roaming about in a state of nakedness. If she did not place her family in her old case, they might have great difficulty in clothing themselves, for straws and stalks rich in pith are not found everywhere, and yet, unless they died of exposure, it appears that sooner or later they would find some kind of garment, since they seem ready to use any material that comes to hand. I have made many experiments with newborn grubs in a glass tube. So we'll pause there. So you want to narrate the last part that we just read?
No, I don't.
Go ahead. Sometimes it takes more attention to listen when someone else is reading. Oh, do you want me to start?
Yeah.
At the beginning, it was talking about these little bits that they couldn't hook onto their bodies, but they could spin silk like a spider's web, and so they began to make this long strand of silk, I think, and attach the little sticks to that like a belt or something, and then they wrapped it around their body, and then they kept working on it. And what did it say they did then?
I don't know.
So when my kids were little and I was learning to homeschool them using Charlotte Mason, and they seemed to have missed what I read. Charlotte Mason says you only read once and then you narrate once, and it's just too bad and you miss the information. So now I just let it go. But when they were little, I sometimes got angry and I'd say, you need to pay better attention. Why weren't you paying attention?
Still do that.
I still do that, but I try
All
to
the
do
time.
it less. I wish you would have been paying attention, but sometimes it's hard. And the more I've narrated at workshops and things, I've learned that if I get distracted at one point, I miss the whole thing. And then I feel embarrassed and I can't narrate. And it's actually really hard to stay focused when someone else is reading. So I understand a little more. So we'll end there. And I guess she just missed that part, which is too bad. But we're not going to go back and read it because there's only time enough in the day. I don't usually reread things though anymore. And we'll pause here and then we'll get our nature journals out and we'll video that too.